Welcome to the Mushroom Show, the one place where you need to be if you want to stay on top of all the cool things happening in the world of mushrooms. I am your host, Tony Shields. This is episode 40, and in this episode, we're going to be going on a journey deep into the burnt down forests of Alberta to hunt for morels. And let me tell you, this isn't a lazy afternoon finding a handful of natural morels in a wood chip pile. This was a deep trek into the woods to find commercial quantities of wild morel mushrooms. We also cooked them up in a very fun way, and I can say without a doubt it was one of the most delicious mushroom meals I have ever had. We're also going to be touching on a really important piece of mushroom news, specifically one about a new study looking at how psilocybin mushrooms actually affect the brain and the way that leads to our perception of the world, including what implications that could have for its potential use as a medicine. So as always, if you like mushrooms, if you like the Mushroom Show, please do go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to see future episodes of the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Let's jump into the show. I've been talking a fair bit about morels lately on the show, but for good reason. They are just so interesting, and when there's a rolling season starting early in the spring down south and lasting all the way into midsummer up north, it's hard not to have morels on the mind. That being said, I was planning on avoiding morels as a topic at least until next spring, but that all changed when I got a phone call from my friend Eric Whitehead. This is a guy that's been hunting for morels for well over a decade and who really knows what he's talking about when it comes to wild mushrooms. So when he phoned me up and said that he knows a spot where the morels are currently popping within a few hour drive from town, I just couldn't resist, especially because I can bring my camera and take you along for the ride. Let's roll the clip. So I am somewhere in Alberta, I'm not going to tell you exactly where, but I'm on my way to meet a good friend of mine, Eric Whitehead. He has a company called Untamed Feast, which sells really delicious mushroom products, but he's also a great guy to hang out with when you want to go find some wild mushrooms. And we are heading to a burn site to look for morels. Now, you might have found morels in the forest, you know, kind of natural morels here and there, but if you can get them at a burn site, you can find huge gobs of morels, and that is quite often where commercial mushroom pickers will go looking for huge quantities of morels. I guess it's the right time of year right now where we are, and the morels are apparently popping off, and hopefully we can find Eric and head out into the woods and find some morels. So let's go. So I don't know exactly where I'm going still, but this is a good sign because you can see all those trees are burnt. So obviously it's a forest fire where hopefully we're gonna find a bunch of morels. Hunting morels is kind of a weird thing. It takes a ton of effort. You have to drive out to these remote locations, get dirty, get in the mud, and battle the bugs, but for some reason, as hopefully you'll see by the end of the segment, it seems worth it. All right, I found his truck, so let's see what we can go find. Now I'm really looking forward to this because again, morels, they grow every spring in forests that aren't burned, but burn site morels grow in forests like this. Trees are all burned down and they can grow in way larger amounts, and they're typically much higher quality morels. So it's kind of hard to find these. People will scour burn maps from the year before to try and find sites that have just recently burned so they can go get morels, and there's a whole science to try and find these locations. So I feel pretty lucky to be here, and I can't wait to see what we can find. In general, hunting mushrooms is always a crapshoot, although you can give yourself the best odds by going to the right place at the right time, and sometimes you get a little lucky. I did find some morels pretty darn quickly. These ones were perhaps a few days to a week past their prime, but it was still a good sign to see so many so early. Well, there are tons of morels already, but a lot of them look like they're kind of old. This one looks like it's been chewed on a little bit. By the time I found Eric, he had already found almost a whole 5-gallon bucket full. Because when it comes to wild mushrooms, he definitely knows what he's doing. He started his company, called Untamed Feast, originally in BC, that's all about finding delicious edible mushrooms, turning them into food, and making it easy for people to enjoy them without having to do all the intense work.
Yeah, so I'm Eric with Untamed Feast. We're a mushroom company based in St. Albert, Alberta. But what we've been doing today, picking morels, whether you're in Alberta or whether you're in BC or Ontario or somewhere in the States, it doesn't matter. That's all about the year following a forest fire. There may be a nice crop of morel mushrooms that comes up, and they come up because of the massive tree death that happens.
Eric wasn't the only one out on this trip. Of course, there was Finnegan, his dog, but also his friend Kevin Kosselin, and they were doing more than just hunting morels. Kevin was using this opportunity to film an episode from his award-winning show called From the Wild, a series dedicated to the idea of wild food.
My name's Kevin Kosselin. I'm, I guess, an outdoor food guide about half the year, maybe now. And the rest of the time I produce film in the food and the wild food space. Eric and I have known each other for some time, and he's wanted to come out and film morel picking for a very long time. There was so many burns in the province last year, so we're filming an episode for season 11 of From the Wild right now.
In the common vernacular, all the morels at a burn site are basically just referred to as burn morels, but there are a variety of distinct types that all have unique characteristics. Eric refers to these different types not by the species name, but by the common names in the picking world, namely conicas, greens, grays, or blondes. Yeah, what do you mean when you say greens?
Well, I know they don't look green here, but they have kind of some green in the stem a bit. They have kind of an olive green, dark olive green look. See multiple walls, 2 walls. See that? Mm-hmm. 2 walls, 1, 2. Whereas a conica, and it's just a denser, heavier mushroom. Whereas a conica just has 1 wall. I know they look quite similar. This is another blonde. Blondes and grays are kind of, brothers and sisters. And then the greens. So let's do blonde, gray, green. And then you got your regular, or what we call a conica. So those are the 4 you'll get in the fire. And this is the order they usually come in. They come conicas, then with the heat, grays and blondes, and then at the end of the burn, or in a pour burn, you get the greens.
In terms of different types, it doesn't much matter. You'd have to be a real connoisseur to notice the taste difference. And it's hard to pick wrong because basically nothing else is growing, except of course for the terribly named false morel, which is poisonous, but it really doesn't look like a morel at all anyways. We did find one little patch, but for the most part, all we found was huge gobs of true morels, and lots of them.
Pretty happy with this haul. That's a big one, yeah. Holy shit, look at that one.
Ooh. See why they're called greens?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's that? It's a gray. It's a good looking gray. Kind of like... Oh.
Which makes you wonder, could you make a ton of money doing this? A lot of people see these huge baskets of morels and their relatively high price and get dollar signs in their eyes. But for those who have done it before, they'll tell you that's not always the case.
Mushroom picking, morel picking is more of a lifestyle. There's a lot of good people come together, work hard, and if it's a really good season and you're on a really good burn and the price of mushrooms is reasonable, you might get lucky and have $1,000 day at peak season. But, on average, if you're a really good picker and you've got some experience, you might make like $400 a day sort of thing, $500 a day. But you're going to have to sit through the $50 a day type of thing, and you're still going to have to burn fuel, and you're camping in the elements and all the rest of it.
The other interesting thing to think about is the recent surge of cultivation that's occurring with morels. They are no longer only wild, and you might be wondering if that's going to kill the mystique or the urge to hunt for this wild mushroom.
There's kind of 4 types of these burn morels that come. So it's kind of like there's 3 types of wild salmon, the greens, the grays, and the blondes, but the conica could be cultivated or wild. But if only one of those is cultivatable, then the other ones actually are commanding lately more of a value. So they're still 100% wild. Sort of like that's still sockeye salmon. It's not farmed Atlantic salmon, right?
Okay, so it's worth it to pick them. But the money isn't really the only draw. So why do people go through all of this effort to pick and eat morels? Are they really that tasty?
The reason the romance is there is it's one of the last kind of ways to go out into the woods, pick some mushrooms, receive cash, live free, You know, it's kind of like a resurgence of the 1960s. And then you have some spending money also.
I think it's interesting because the kind of person that wants to go find a morel really cares. They really care. They don't care about whether they find 1 or 10 or 100. They're just really happy to get out and be looking for them and find them, and then if they do, to cook them and share them with someone that they love that also cares. There is no price tag that you can attach to that process. What we achieve today, while on a commercial level, you could pick it apart to the nth degree on quality. I took pride in the fact that I picked quality that like no commercial picker would pick. I don't care. It's super great for me. I'm gonna fry them up or dry them out, and we'll enjoy the heck out of them. The value, I guess, is in how you relate to food, how you relate to the people that you feed, whether food is like a love language for you or not. And there's lots of people that don't care about food. I get that. I bump into it all the time. But for those that do care, there's like nothing that's more important.
I guess, do people care? Like, how much of the draw to morels is the flavor, the taste, or how much of it is the fact that they are kind of rare? You can only find them in the wild. They're wild harvested. And is it people that actually care, or is it more just the chefs that actually care? Or what is some of the culture around morels?
I think it's all those things, but honestly, I think the thing about morels, from all the bougie fancy plates and everything aside, it's a mushroom that doesn't really taste like a mushroom that people don't like. It's meaty. It tastes like meat. It has a texture like meat. It's not offensive. People who don't even like mushrooms, if you shove some down their throat, they like morels. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the main reason why, kind of blended with this giant romance, because they're hard to get.
Morels are what have people's attention. And my broad motivation is to get people to care about these spaces so that we take better care of them. And if it's currently morels, that's the flavor of the month of what people understand and what they're interested in, great.
One thing that might have people hesitant to try wild food like this is the fact that eating wild mushrooms is a little scary. And fair enough, there are some deadly poisonous mushrooms out there. But a lot of the work that Eric and Kevin are doing is to try and change people's minds about that. And Kevin in particular made some really good points here.
I remind people almost daily at this time of year that edibility is an abstract concept, and that we choose to have peanuts in grocery stores, for example. That's a food that will make people dead. We know this. We decide to continue to put it into grocery stores, and that's just kind of social contract, our understanding of this toxic thing that will make some people dead and not others. This space is no different. It's just there's more species to learn, which is not a big deal if you're willing to spend some time learning it. But I think there's a lot of like, this space is scary and the grocery store is safe. And I would argue that nope. For a celiac, the grocery store is not a safe place. There's tons of stuff that's not cool for them. For someone who can't take dairy, that place is not a safe place for them. They have to know how to navigate it. So it is a scary thing. It puts a bit of onus on us to know more about the food that we're eating. I think that's great, especially when you start to consider the overlap, the Venn diagram of like food and then medicinal and impact on health. I think that's a good thing, that we have some responsibility and some maybe motivated to take some initiative to learn more about what we're putting in our body.
And speaking of eating morels, it was time to cook. There are tons of different ways you can prepare morels, with the main thing to keep in mind is that morels need to be cooked. We decided to do that by battering them in beer and flour and deep frying them. It was actually a super fun way to do it. We were all feeling really relaxed after a fun but hard day.
These definitely are kind of greasy, less cooked than the first round. Sorry. Just happened. I think I got the cereal myself.
Cut the audio here because you probably don't want a close-up sound of me eating morels, but let me tell you, wow, they were crunchy, delicious, and everything you could hope a morel could be.
Can you tell which one this is, Eric? What kind?
It's a gray.
This is gray?
Oh, damn. There's nothing wrong with those onion rings.
Sure. What do you think of those morels, though? Good. Right?
Oh, chewy? Oh, they're perfect.
But again, it wasn't necessarily just all about the morel, because if I did somehow manage to get these at the grocery store, they might taste similar, but part of the enjoyment is everything else I got to experience leading up to it, which is often something I experience with hunting for mushrooms. Sometimes you just need an excuse to do something fun, be outdoors, and to learn about the world. And mushrooms are a really great way to get that done. So I hope you enjoyed that. I just love going into the woods and hunting for wild mushrooms. Again, thanks to Eric and to Kevin for taking me along on their trip and finding a bunch of mushrooms. That was really cool, especially when you get to enjoy such a delicious meal like that at the end of it all. So I hope to be doing a lot more of this, and if so, I'll definitely take you along. This episode of The Mushroom Show is brought to you by FreshCap Mushrooms, pure and powerful mushrooms to help you achieve your health goals. Choose from top functional mushrooms like the wildly popular lion's mane, also known as the brain mushroom, the more classic defender and beta-glucan powerhouse turkey tail, or have it all with the ultimate mushroom complex, which contains an equal blend of top functional mushrooms, including lion's mane, turkey tail, cordyceps, maitake, chaga, and reishi. Available in powder form that can easily be added to smoothies or your morning coffee, and also available in convenient capsules. So if you want to get mushroom powered, simply search for FreshCap on Amazon or head over to freshcap.com to get yours. Let's get back to the show. On to our next story. How do psychedelics, specifically psilocybin mushrooms, this is the mushroom show after all, but how do they actually work? Because yes, we know that there's a compound in psilocybin containing mushrooms, of course that being psilocybin, that dephosphorylates into psilocin, which then plugs into the 5-HT2A receptor and causes a whole host of perplexing effects. But the brain is not such a simple mechanism. It's easy to think of the eye as maybe a digital camera lens that's just collecting raw data of the world around us, feeding that directly into the brain and giving us an unfiltered dose of reality. But there's a lot more to it than that. How it really works is that our brain makes a bunch of assumptions that are formed by long-held beliefs about how the world is supposed to work, and then interpolates that, layering it on top of the raw signals from our sensory organs before finally creating a model of our world. And that's just how normal baseline perception works, which makes one wonder, how does psilocybin affect how we perceive the world, and what implications might that have for human psychology and for psilocybin therapy? It's really important stuff. Well, scientists at the UC Berkeley Center for the Science of Psychedelics have kicked off a new study that they hope can start to answer some of these questions. Reading right from their news release titled, "Psychedelics Change How We See the World. A UC Berkeley study aims to find out why. Researchers will use neuroimaging to observe the effects of psilocybin on the human brain in real time." I just think this is really cool because psilocybin is such a mysterious compound. It's wrapped in so much mystery, and there's still so much that is unknown about how it's actually affecting the brain, how it's actually affecting perception, and hopefully this study can start to unravel some of those mysteries. The article says, in the experiment, healthy human participants will ingest psilocybin. Each participant will then perform simple perceptual tasks while their visual cortex is monitored using MRI. It continues, the researchers hope that by gaining a better understanding of how psilocybin interacts with the brain's visual system, one of the best understood parts of the brain, they will also obtain insights into these drugs' wide-ranging impacts on the human mind. Another thing that I think is so cool about this study is that hopefully it can be totally objective in the results. Many of the studies involving psilocybin are really based around questionnaires that people are answering, really focused on how people are feeling, maybe emotions during a psilocybin experience or after a psilocybin experience, or maybe just monitoring the behaviors that people are exhibiting during these times. And this can very much be impacted by how people are primed. For example, if I gave you a bowl of soup and I told you this is the best soup in the world, it's been prepared by a Michelin star chef, well, you'd probably have pretty good expectations about that soup and you'd probably think that it tastes pretty good. Whereas if I gave you an old bowl of soup and just said, yeah, this is leftovers from a couple of days ago, you might not think it's as delicious. So even if someone has never experienced psilocybin before, there's likely some cultural or societal expectations that are baked into that experience, which could show up in clinical results. But looking at the brain directly, in this case using MRI, scientists might be able to get a more objective viewpoint on what's going on. They talk about this idea of prior beliefs in the article and how much that can affect our perception by again giving the analogy of a camera lens, saying that human vision is powered just as much by our brains as it is by our eyes. If our visual perception were determined by only the cells in our eyes, humans would see approximately with the same resolution as the camera on the original 2007 Apple iPhone. Instead, our brains construct a rich, detailed view of the world by combining the limited sensory information from our eyes with assumptions based on regularly occurring patterns that we experience in the visual world. These assumptions, also called visual priors, fill in the gaps and help to resolve ambiguities in the sensory data. The example they give for this in the article is really cool. They show two images that are exactly the same, except for the image on the right is rotated by 180 degrees. So as you can see, the image on the left looks like it's a hill and the image on the right looks like it's a crater, and that is because the human brain is assuming that the light source is coming from above. I've seen the same type of thing before as well in a viral Reddit post of a menu board that says the peas are upside down, and it's showing the same effect. We believe that the peas in this picture are out of place, shown to be upside down because of the way we expect the light source to be. Well, now you know why it looks this way. But back to the experiment, the scientists at UC Berkeley are going to be testing the famous rebus hypothesis, which stands for relaxed beliefs under psychedelics, which they say proposes that psychedelics work by relaxing implicit assumptions so that our perceptions are shaped less by visual priors and more by raw sensory information. In short, can psilocybin be used to dissolve previously held beliefs? And I'm sure many people, anecdotally at least, would say absolutely yes. And now scientists are really putting that theory to the test. And for more context, here's the paper from neuroscientists Robin Carhart-Harris and Carl Friston titled Rebus and the Anarchic Brain: Toward a Unified Model of the Brain Action of Psychedelics, where they say, we propose that psychedelics work to relax the precision weighting of pathologically overweighted priors underpinning various expressions of mental illness. Priors here meaning expectations or learned behaviors of the brain, and how if psilocybin can override those, it might be useful for therapy. But also, as they write, the potential that psychedelics can bring about the revision of other heavily weighted high-level priors not directly related to mental health, such as those underlying partisan and or overly confident political, religious, and or philosophical perspectives. Again, I think intuitively people already kind of know this about psilocybin mushrooms, that they can change the way that people see the world. It can potentially break old thought patterns or old habits simply by presenting old information in a new, unfiltered way. Another good example, I remember one study where they were seeing if psilocybin could help people quit smoking, and one of the participants was able to quit simply because of the fact that they suddenly realized that it was kind of gross and it was kind of destructive to their health. Again, nothing really changed except for their perception of that activity. But back to the UC Berkeley article, it says the rebus theory is difficult to test in the context of mental health because scientists only have a limited understanding of how high-level beliefs, such as self-image, are encoded in the brain. Silver, who is Michael Silver, the director of the Berkeley Center for the Science of Psychedelics and the one who is leading the study, hopes that by shifting these research questions to the visual system, his team will be able to test this theory more rigorously while also obtaining valuable information about how psychedelics impact the visual system and visual perception. According to a video that they had in this article, they explained that they are going to take healthy volunteers and test how they report various visual stimuli, so like very simple animations for example, and then under the influence of psilocybin, show them the same visual stimuli while recording their brain activity and see how that changes. This sounds like very basic research, but remember, this study of psilocybin was restricted for so long, so this foundational type research is very, very important and will probably have huge implications. I am definitely looking forward to see what the results of this study might be. And that's it for this episode of The Mushroom Show. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. If you like mushrooms, if you like The Mushroom Show, please do go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to see future episodes of the show, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.